Hey guys, this is Ed with Aquarium. Got another comparison for you here today. We're going to look a couple years back, 1 year back, and currently, going from left to right, we got an iPhone 10 here, which is from 2 years ago. We got an iPhone 10R from last year, and we got the iPhone 11 from this year. The reason this lineup is here in front of you is because these are very comparable because they're the same size factor, and the screens are very similar, and I think that they're not the flagships here by Apple, so we're going to compare these two. And I'm throwing the 10 in here simply because it's from 2 years ago. It's a great device, and it'd be very interesting to see how it compares against the 10R and the 11. Now, 10s is not in here. I decided to skip the generation because this used to be a flagship, and I would be concerned that 10R is going to perform very, very well, and there isn't really a reason to have it there. Also, many of you know that I'm a big fan of iPhone 10 just simply because of how great it is, and it's very unfortunate that it was taken off the market so quickly. Now, let's go ahead and take a look briefly at the size of the phones. So the 10 is probably the smallest or the second to smallest iPhone that's ever been released in the recent years. It's actually a normal size is what I would call it, and this is what I personally prefer, not only because it's an iPhone 10, but it's very easy to fit in the pocket. But glass back, same with the 10R, and one camera in the back. And the 11. The 11 is actually glass in the back, but it's not matte finish, which is what you would see in the 11 Pro and the 11 Pro Max. Now what we're going to do here is we're actually going to run Geekbench 5 and see how all three of these perform side by side. So without further ado, let's go ahead and run the Geekbench 5, and we'll do the CPU test, and which will be followed by a performance test mobile. Alright guys, as you can see, the iPhone 11 resulted first with the Geekbench score, which is not surprising because it carries the A13 Bionic, which is the most recent processor, while the 10R resulted second and 10 resulted third, which is certainly expected given the recency of these generations. So obviously the 10 that scored 937 on the single core score versus 1107 on the single core score on the iPhone 10R and 1338 on the iPhone 11. And so notice the disparity in the scores is actually higher between the iPhone 10R and iPhone 11. So it looks like the advancement in technology is slightly greater in the last year than it was in a couple of years. I'm definitely hypothesizing, but also look at the multi-core score right over here. It's 3,466 versus 2,539 versus 2,602. Again, will you notice a visual difference in performance across these three phones? Probably not, and hence I certainly recommend with the cheapest device, especially if you're looking to save money and get something from the secondary market, I would certainly suggest in favor of the 10. I will tell you that the battery lasts on these for quite a while, and for that reason some people actually get those because the 10Rs have a lower resolution screen, which seems to save you battery a little bit more. But again, it's all a matter of a preference. I think that the 10 is also the sleekest device of all the three, but of course it's going to be for you to decide, and this is really not about choices, it's really about benchmarks and to help you understand which phone performs better. So this is certainly a winner, which is the iPhone 11 that was just released. For those of you that favor visual performance benchmarks, I installed 3D Mark Slingshot on all three of these to help you visualize how they perform. As you may have noticed in one of my previous videos, the iPhone 11 Pro actually froze in the beginning of this test, so I'm hoping that this will go rather smoothly on all three of these, which that has actually never happened before except that one time recently. So let's go ahead and hit run and see how they will perform side by side right next to each other. I'm going to pause fast forwarding of this video right here so that you can visualize how the 10 is a little patchy on the way that it produces the image. So the FPS constantly drops to a point where it becomes noticeable to human eye. Doesn't happen on the 11 at all, and it happened a couple of times on the 10R over here. By the way, I do have the 10R in the middle here so that it's closer to 11 because this is really a direct comparison. Alright guys, so as in the previous test by Geekbench 5, iPhone 11 resulted first. I must tell you, in every single segment of the 3D Mark test here, the frames per second averaged definitely above 20 almost most of the time. So consistently it was in the low 20s, maybe it dropped a couple of times to 18, 19, but it was significantly higher most of the time. Not so much on the 10R. The 10R was probably no more than 25, and it was dropping lower than 20 quite frequently. And for the 10 here on your left, this was constantly dropping below 20, but it wasn't just below 20, it was very, very low. It was probably around 11 to 12. So this certainly tells you that 3D Mark is still a valid testing tool for at least 2 iPhone generations here, and it's very interesting to see how they compare. Now, of course, most of the games that you will find in the App Store that you might consider playing on these phones, you probably won't be able to see the frames per second drop so drastically as it did on the 10, but 3D Mark is specifically designed to test the performance. So this is really a drastic difference between the scores. You're essentially, in 2 years, you're improving by a significant amount. It's probably close to 2400 that I can tell between the 10 and the 11. It goes up incrementally by about 1000 here, just like it did on the Geekbench 5, right? So it's a smaller increment, but then you're jumping essentially 1,500 points from just a year ago. So this is very remarkable, and I think that, of course, this is certainly the winner. This is driven by the A13 Bionic, but nevertheless, they're all 3 great phones, and pick and choose the one that you like the most. But of course, in terms of performance, I vote for iPhone 11. All right, guys, and what we're going to do next, we're going to use Performance Test Mobile. It's this little app that will very objectively test the internals of these phones here. So we're just going to run the benchmark, and we'll take a look at the result. That will be followed by some discussion. Alright guys, and here's some more results for you. This is from the Performance Test Mobile. It's a very neat app. It uses very simple graphics, but it's very remarkable in how accurate the results are. And we're going to scroll all the way up on here and start with the CPU score, just to double check what we saw in the previous tests by the other 2 apps, which is the Geekbench 5 and the 3D Mark, which is more visual than this, of course, pretty graphics and movies. But here again, we see something that's a lesser of a disparity between the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 10R, and the CPU score is only different by about 16,000 points between the 10 and the 10R, which is very, very interesting. And the reason it's interesting is because they scored more so differently by a larger fraction in the previous tests. Now, of course, we're getting very, very close to 700,000 points. It's a very high result. That is very, very remarkable. But again, this is the newest phone. Now, if you look at the storage write and read speed for the internal storage, this is a major improvement on the iPhone 11. It's at 618 megabits per second. That's pretty high. That's probably one of the highest results I've seen on this app. And it's 151 on iPhone 10, 259 on iPhone 10R, and also is reflected very well in the points that they score. The ratio is a little bit different between the points and the write and the read speed in megabits per second. But when you translate it into the actual score, you're getting a score higher by 60,000 points than you would on the 10R, and even less so on the iPhone 10. When we talk about the memory, that being RAM, that score is in the millions of points, and this result definitely supersedes. There's not much to say about that. It certainly is faster. This phone has 6 gigs of RAM, and both of these have 3, even though they're only 1 year apart, and certainly 11 is the winner here again. Alright guys, and this is the last thing that we're going to do today with the 3 of these phones. And the reason I do this, all those benchmarking apps are great. They don't necessarily translate in what you would see in a day-to-day operation with these phones, and the fluidity of the interface and how they perform, how they check your email and so on. This is what you're going to be doing with these really. It's going to be watching YouTube videos, browsing Instagram, and writing posts on Facebook and Twitter. And so I'm going to try to tap on the screen simultaneously and open the same exact video from my YouTube channel, and we'll see how long it takes to open that video on 3 of these phones. I will bet you iPhone 11 is going to be the fastest, and 10 is likely to be slower than the 10R. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Alright guys, and surprisingly enough, 10R is actually the winner here, followed by the 11, and certainly 10 was the slowest here. And I will tell you that this is a negligible difference in terms of performance. That's really not a big disparity. As we move further towards the end of 2019, go into 2020, when Apple and all these other phone manufacturers will come out with even faster processors, and hopefully 5G will be fully implemented. This is when it's going to be really interesting to test drive the difference between the newer processors with the 5G capability and some of these older phones that still carry the LTE as the highest capability to connect to the servers and for you to watch YouTube. So this was the last test on these phones, and as you can see, their interface is very equally smooth between the three of these. They're all beautiful phones. I would recommend in favor of any of these equally, almost, with the exception that, again, 10, if you can find it on the secondary market, it's going to be less expensive because it's 2 years out. 10R and the 11, I'm not really a big fan of them, simply because the resolution is lower, so the picture is just not as clear, and no matter what brightness level you actually have set on it, it's still going to look a little dim. Again, these are just my 5 cents about these three phones. They're all great, like I said before, so feel free to choose if you're looking for one. Now, again, thank you for watching this video. I enjoyed being here with you today. Looking forward to being with you the next time, and the next video is going to be on the flagships by iPhone, so stay tuned, stay classy. Again, thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video very soon. I wanted to tell you about sellcashier.com. So you just got your new iPhone. What will you do with your old one? You may be thinking of selling it on eBay, Craigslist, and so on, and it is definitely a hassle. Now you don't have to do that. Now you can sell it through sellcashier.com. They compare the actual prices of iPhones and give you the best price for your iPhone that you are trying to sell. And the good thing is that you are guaranteed the best rate. You also get a free shipping label. Thank you for watching, and please check out sellcashier.